Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel Diamonds and Washi. This is Katie. If you're new here, hi, welcome, and if you're back, welcome back. Today I am going to be sharing with you a much requested video from both my subscribers and some of my followers over on Instagram who have been asking me for quite some time to share a little bit more about how I multiplace and some tips and tricks that I have for how to go about multiplacing if it's something you've just been having trouble with. I know for me, it took me a while to make myself practice doing it because it just felt like ultimately it was taking me much longer to figure out multiplacing than if I just would have single placed, especially because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So whether or not you're brand new to multiplacing or just haven't been able to quite get the hang of it, I hope that today's video will be helpful for you, especially because I think I have a little bit different approach to multiplacing than a lot of other people do. So I'll be curious to hear what you think. First things first, let's start with a good foundation. We want to have a couple of key things that are going to make multiplacing even easier for us. First, a tray. A big tray is usually helpful, especially if you're going to be multiplacing large amounts, but any tray will do. You're also going to want, obviously, a pen with a multiplacer itself. I am going to strongly recommend, whether or not you are a beginner or just trying to get the hang of multiplacing a little bit better, I'm going to very strongly recommend that you get the skinnier white multiplacers. For comparison's sake, this is the thicker multiplacer that comes with a lot of toolkits and you can even, buy yourself. But the skinnier ones I find to be just leaps and bounds easier to use. So these are from Star Or on Amazon. Again, I'll link a variety pack that you can get of these in a variety of sizes down in the description below. And last but not least, you're going to want a wax or wax alternative. I strongly recommend and swear by Quake Hold Museum Putty. Particularly for my style of multiplacing, I find that Museum Putty is by far the best option. It's much more forgiving than other waxes. It lasts for a really long time, and it doesn't grip too tightly to the drills and make them hard to get off, especially when you're placing multiple drills. Now let's talk about actually picking our drills up. Once you have your drills in your tray and shake and tap it until they're nicely lined up in rows so they'll be easier to pick up, you're ready to go. So go ahead and make sure that your pen and multiplacer are all set. And let me show you guys how I tend to pick up my drills. So while a lot of diamond painters will actually pick up straight up and down, I tend to actually put my pen at more of an angle. The reason that I do this is because then I can more easily see the drills and how many I've picked up, and it makes it a lot easier for me personally when I'm placing them down on the canvas. This is one of the reasons that I recommend using Museum Putty, because it's very forgiving and works really well for this sort of thing. So how I go about picking up, this is with a 4-placer, so we're starting small. Go ahead and count over from the open end how many drills you want to pick up, in this case 4. Plant the one end on the left, and then rock it down to the right. And then you have your 4 drills. It doesn't show as easily on a smaller multiplacer that I picked these up at an angle, but I will show you on a larger multiplacer here in a moment so you can see more of what that looks like. Let me actually grab that and I'll show you right now. So on a larger multiplacer like this, which is a 10-placer, again, similar idea. I'm putting my pen at a little bit of an angle. I'm planting all the way over to the one I want to pick up, rocking it down. And there we have it. This is going to show up much easier for you, how it's at more of an angle for me. Can you see there how the drills I've picked up show as an angle on this side? Again, I do that because then when I place the drills down on the canvas, it's going to be that much easier for me to see and place accurately. So you want to make sure when you are doing this, don't push down super hard. When it comes to multiplacing, a light hand is best. So if you tend to be more of a heavy-handed placer, I would suggest being more intentional about not pushing really, really hard. The reason for that is then you run into your drills really just wanting to stick in the wax that you have in your multiplacer and having maybe a little bit of trouble coming out on the canvas itself. Also, while I am showing you how I multiplace with putting my pen at more of an angle, these suggestions also still work and apply if you tend to pick up your drills more straight up and down. You can still plant the one end, plant it down on the one side, and then rock it to the right, and that will pick up the drills neatly and in a row for you. Now, let me grab my current project that these drills go with, and I'm going to show you what it looks like now when I am placing these on the canvas. Now, when we go to actually place drills on the canvas, it's going to be a very, very similar concept. Let me zoom you in so that you can see up close what this looks like. So just like before with picking up the drills, we're going to plant the left end and then rock to the right. And they've lined up just perfectly neatly in a row there. So again, I'm going to pick up 4 more drills. They look like they're at a little bit of an angle, and now when I place them at a little bit of an angle, I can take a look and I can center that left drill right on the symbol, and then I immediately, while I'm keeping that planted, I look over to the farthest right symbol and I imagine planting that drill centered perfectly on that symbol as well. Now, inevitably, sometimes when you multiplace, you're going to find that your drills did not end up as straight as you personally would have liked. I am one that tends to then flip over and go to my single placer and just do a little bit of adjusting to get it just right. But you can also use a straightener tool or something similar, and that will also do the trick. Now, as far as multiplacing with a bigger multiplacer, it's going to be a very similar idea. I have my drills loaded up on my 10 placer, ready to go. Again, a little bit of an angle. Same idea. I'm going to plant the one on the left side right in the middle of the symbol, and then immediately I'm going to look over to the right at the furthest right symbol and drill that I'm going to be placing to, and I'm going to imagine stretching my multiplacer over and placing that last drill on the right down. That lets the rest of the drills sort of very neatly line up into place. And if you feel like any of them are just slightly off center, you can go back and sort of tweak them a little bit with your single placer if you want. Let me show you one more time. So I've picked up some drills, holding at a bit of an angle. Let's plant the one right in the middle of the symbol here on the left. Then I'm going to look over to the right, the furthest right symbol and right drill I'm going to place down, stretch it over, rock it down, and lift up. And there we have drills down. Again, I'm kind of a little bit of a fixer, and I do sometimes go back and fiddle with the drills with the single placer, but you certainly don't have to. I'll show you one last time with the larger multiplacer, and again, this applies to the smaller placer as well, but this is a particularly helpful thing to think of when you're dealing with larger multiplacers, and something to get used to as you start using larger ones as well. So plant to the left, look to the right, rock down, and it's placed. Now you're probably noticing that I am specifically only multiplacing horizontally, from left to right, if you will. I find that my particular way of multiplacing, where I am picking up the drills and placing them at a bit of an angle, really lends itself to doing so horizontally. You can do it up and down as well. If you are going to do that and you are like me and right-handed, I find it to be most helpful to go up and down, starting at the left side of your canvas and then moving to the right, because then your drills are kind of at an angle on this side and you can lay down like this. Again, the problem with that though is I find that that puts my hand in the glue if I'm working in a large color blocked section. So for me, placing horizontally is just much more efficient and keeps my hands clean. There are any number of sizes of multiplacers. Specifically today so far I've showed you the 4-placer. I haven't actually worked with this one with you guys yet. This one is a 6-placer, sorry, a 7-placer, and then the 10-placer. They go up as high as 15, And you can even go as low as, I believe they have a 2-placer if you really have a lot of confetti, but like the idea of being able to place just 2 at once. As I mentioned, I would suggest starting with a smaller placer, like a 3 or 4 placer. That lets you sort of get the hang of the technique of multiplacing without having to tackle placing a lot of drills at once. However, just because you are using a 6-placer does not mean that you have to pick up 6 drills at once. In fact, very, very regularly, I am not picking up the same number of drills that the placer calls for. So if it's a 6-placer, often if I have just a spot that only needs 3 drills, I'll just pick up 3 drills. And the way that I do that is that I plant, again, I look at the left. I start on the left side and then roll to the right and just place from there and find that it works really well. So if you only want to pick up a few drills, less than what your multiplacer calls for, again, say I only need 2 drills. I just rock to left and I've picked up 2 drills. And it works very well. So that is definitely an option. You're not bound to place 6 every time with a 6-placer or what have you. Now there are some common problems that you can run into with multiplacing, and most have pretty simple solutions. One of the first things you will most likely run into is you may find that that your multiplacer isn't wanting to pick up all of the drills that it's supposed to. And the first thing that I would suggest doing in that case is, well, just try again. Sometimes it just didn't quite grip it correctly, and so sometimes I'll just pick it up in that gap and then find that it works. And then you can place it. If you find that that is not working for you still, check your wax, particularly if you're using museum putty like I do. This one isn't a terrible culprit just yet, but over time with some multiplacing in a diamond painting session, you'll find that this will get just some grooves in it. And every once in a while, if it's not wanting to pick up some drills in a particular spot, I'll just run my finger over to sort of smooth it over and help it reset for that. The other thing to check for, if you're consistently having trouble with a spot in your multiplacer not wanting to pick up drills, is, especially if you're using a skinny plastic multiplacer, over time the plastic will get grooves in it. Can you see a little bit in this one, sort of the grooves in the top? And on the sides as well. Mine, especially with how I multiplace, was sort of picking up on the one end and rocking to the side. I do get grooves on the ends especially, and then it doesn't want to pick up my drills consistently, especially on the ends. If this happens with your thin plastic multiplacers, you can actually take a nail file and just very gently file the whole thing down until it is even again. You don't have to press hard, and over time you will get to a certain point where you can no longer file it down and you'll just have to replace it. Now, there are stainless steel multiplacers. I have several from Everlasting Tips, and they work well for me. However, they don't tend to work as well with my particular technique of multiplacing, where I'm picking up my drills at a bit of an angle. So they're also a little bit expensive for this. So for the sake of this demonstration, I wanted to show you how I multiplace with the plastic single placers, because especially as a beginner, that's most likely what you're going to be starting out with. Another common problem is to feel like your drills are not spaced evenly, or that they're not laying down in a straight line. And frankly, a lot of that is just going to come with some practice. And also just, again, I find it very helpful to very intentionally think of, okay, I'm going to place and then rock to the side. Another culprit for this is actually when you pick up the drills from your tray. So when you're picking up the drills from your tray, be careful not to squish them together. And what I mean by that is don't plant this here and then squish them, to the side as much as you can, because then your placement is going to be off. They're going to be too close together on the canvas as well. So instead, pick these off. I kind of pushed hard too. Instead, what you want to do is focus on having the drills lined up as neatly as possible in your tray so that you don't have to squish them together to get them to be lined up. So these have done the work for me. It's already lined up. All I need to do is plant. I don't have to squish, I just rock down gently, and there they are. Nice and neat, and you can see how they look a little bit more evenly spaced. And that will help with placing as well. And if you feel like you're having trouble getting them to go in a straight line and not at an angle or at a curve, again, a culprit if they're consistently almost like curving to the sides at the ends can be if the plastic has worn down on the ends and it's not picking up your drills evenly, especially relative to the rest of the multiplacer. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Now, while the demo I've been doing today has been with round drills, all of these techniques are applicable to square drills as well. However, there's something in particular that you'll want to watch out for if you are multiplacing with square drills, and that is you really have to be diligent about picking out the trash drills from your tray. And that includes, in particular, square drills that have the little tabs on the ends. If you put the drills in your tray and the square drills are not lining up neatly in a row without like awkward little tiny gaps in between, those are going to be difficult to multiplace. And ultimately, if you're putting a lot of square drills on your canvas that have tabs or are just sort of trashy drills, they're likely going to pop if you are placing a lot of those on your canvas as well. Now, if you're purchasing from a company like this particular kit is from Diamond Art Club, hopefully you're not going to have too much of an issue with drill quality, but I always like to take a look in my tray and pick out any pieces of trash before I start multiplacing, just to save myself some headache. You'll also want to keep an eye out for consistently sized drills. Like in this kit, some of these drills, occasionally I'll just find ones that are a little bit smaller than the rest. And I try to pick those out like I've done here. And otherwise, if I were to try to pick those up and multiplace with them, it would mess with my spacing. And also that drill's gonna look funny on the canvas. And if you're anything like me, you really want that consistency. So just something to keep in mind. So just to recap, the way that I recommend going about learning to multiplace and get the swing of multiplacing is to start with a smaller multiplacer. However, if you're finding that for whatever reason a smaller multiplacer is throwing you off, try a little bit bigger one. To be totally honest, I almost never use a 4-placer because I find it a little bit awkward to use, and I had a much easier time when I learned how to multiplace using a 6-placer instead. So that's why I recommend picking up one of the variety packs of the skinny multiplacers from Star Ore on Amazon. They're not expensive, and that lets you have a variety at your fingertips to see which one works best for you. However, I would not recommend right out the gate grabbing a 10-placer and going for it. I mean, you absolutely can, but I think it might frustrate you more if you were to do that. I'd also encourage you to give it time. Like I said, when I first started with multiplacing, I threw in the towel more than once because it felt like this is just taking way too long to get the hang of. It's just frustrating me and it's not worth it. I'm just going to single place. But when I look at big sections of color blocking like this and imagine single placing it, yeah, that's motivation for me to learn how to multiplace more efficiently. So just embrace that it's not going to look super neat and tidy right out the gate. You can always go back through and make little adjustments with your single placer or with a straightener or something similar. And with time, it will absolutely get easier. So I think that's it for me today as far as this multiplacing tutorial goes. If you're a fan of time lapses, I'm going to go ahead and time lapse my multiplacing and completing this section, and you can see what that looks like in action and how long that actually takes me. I'll let you know on the other end of it. But again, I just wanted to recap that if you are looking to try a similar technique to me, where you're kind of picking up drills at an angle so that you have more visibility when you're placing them on your canvas, I think of planting on the left, rock down to the right when I pick up, and then when I'm placing on the canvas, I plant to the left, look to the right, and stretch over to place that drill on the farthest right symbol, and they've lined up nice and neatly. So let me go ahead and go into a time lapse of the rest of this section, and I will catch you on the other side. And there we have it. Does anyone else love a good time-lapse video, or is it just me? They're so soothing. Anyway, that section in that time-lapse that I just showed you took about 25 minutes. So a heck of a lot faster than that would have gone if I would have been single placing. So there's something to be said for putting in the time and the little bit of headache and learning curve to get the hang of multiplacing. It can be a really good time saver, and it is possible to do neatly. Something I did learn as I was working on this section that I hadn't even occurred to me is to multiplace more neatly. I strongly recommend having a flat, firm surface under your canvas. So under this and under the cover that it's on, I have a rustic textured kitchen table. And normally I put down like a flat piece of cardboard from a stiff box or something like that. And just for whatever reason, I completely forgot to do that before filming this evening. And I believe that's the culprit for why I was having a little bit of a tough time with getting my drills to line up as neatly as they usually do when I'm multiplacing. But I think you still got the idea. I hope that this video was really helpful for you guys. Please, of course, if you have any questions about multiplacing in general or anything that I mentioned in this video, leave them down in the comment section below. I'll be keeping an eye out and answering everything that I can. And of course, I'll be linking everything that I used tonight, from the trays to the Quake Cold Museum putty to the pens to the set of plastic skinny multiplacers that I very highly recommend. If you guys would be interested in additional multiplacing videos, for example, with the everlasting tips or with square drills or anything like that, just let me know. I have other things I'd be happy to show you guys, but just for beginner tips and just for giving you a better sense of the technique that I use when I multiplace, hopefully this gives you a good starting point. If this video was helpful for you, please give it a thumbs up before you click away. And if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you're notified whenever I share new videos, which is not currently on a schedule, but I try to check in with you guys regularly. Either way, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you again soon, guys. Bye.